Hello, everyone. You are listening to the C Squared podcast with Corey and Curtis. Today, you just get to put up with just us and our shenanigans and tomfoolery, which is always fun. And we're going to be talking about a topic that a lot of people seem to struggle with, and that is choosing the right people to listen to and knowing when to listen to somebody. Because we work with a lot of different people, we work with a lot of different clients, and there seems to be a disconnect with where people get their advice and where people are looking to grow. So we just want to touch base with everybody, give you guys a good breakdown on who you should be listening to and how to choose those people, because there may be some well-intentioned people out there that will give you bad advice and some not so well-intentioned people out there that'll give you really bad advice.
Or there's good intentioned people out there that give you what they think is good advice, but is actually bad advice.
And then there's also even better intentioned people who give you great advice. So how to decide?
Okay, so first of all, you should always listen to us. That's number one, right? Always.
It's because we know everything there is to know. No, we don't. But
no. Okay, so very first thing. So number one thing you want to look for when you're getting advice from someone is you have to look at who they are. That's number one, I think. Who they are, what they're currently doing, what they've done in the past, that type of thing. So like, for example, if I gave advice to Corey on something like, I don't know, cooking, I'm okay at it, but I'm not that good at it. So if I was giving her advice on how to do, I don't know, some sort of fancy dish, I probably am not the best person to give her the advice on. If she asked me for advice on how it tasted, might be good. But okay, we'll bring it over into bands though. So there's a lot of bands that'll go for advice to people that are a lot bigger than them. That's the number one thing. So you'll have a band, like let's say they're just starting out or they're just kind of starting to get popular, and they'll go to someone like, I don't know, a bigger band that's like a B-level band or an A-level band. I don't want to bring any names into it, obviously, but they'll go to a bigger band and ask them.
Has, millions of followers, who sells out stadiums. And I mean, yeah, that's the goal to get there. But if you're going to a band that is that big, chances are they've been around for 20 to 30 years. They've been around a while, and they are out of touch with what it takes to grow a band now because they've been big for so long. Or
they have a team around them that has a lot more connections or experience than what you do. A good example of this would be like, I've seen bands who will we're going to go into PR for a second, because I mean, that's closer to home for me. So I've seen bands who will get a PR campaign, and then they'll talk to another band that's a lot bigger than them. And that band will say something like, well, you should be in Loudwire, or you should be in Pitchfork, or you should be in Stereogum or something like that, because we got in there. Mm-hmm. And that band will kind of take that, but the thing they're not realizing is that band has been around, like Corey has said, for like 5 years, 10 years. They're on a major label, they've been on a major tour or something to that effect. So that band might be putting in their ear, okay, well, your PR is not doing very good because you didn't land at Loudwire, for example. But the difference is, new band on debut EP is not going to be getting the same results as a band who's been on a major tour or a band who's been on a major label.
Or a band who's on their 8th release, who's been around for 20 years, and it's going to be an entirely different game. Or they won't talk to any bands, but they'll see who those bands are working with. Let's stick with PR, and they hire one of the biggest PRs in the country, thinking that they're going to get the same results. But even with the biggest names behind you, there's going to be a couple of things that'll happen. One, you're not going to be that person's priority. If they're working with someone, say, Lamb of God, that's going to be their bread and butter. Those are going to be their babies. Those are the ones that they're going to give all their attention to, because those are the ones that are making them the money. Your campaign, they're going to blast it out and hope for the best.
It's
and
a time.
Their name won't get you where you want to go. Like, their name alone won't get you where you want to go.
Yeah, it's a bit different, because like when you're talking PR, like if you do have a big band, like let's say Behemoth or whatever, people are coming to you for the press versus you having to go to the press to get the coverage. So if you get, so like, let's say you go and you contact one of these big name PRs, they'll charge you the 3,000, 4,000, whatever it is that they normally charge people based upon their connections to what they have and the big acts that they've been with. But the problem is, like Corey said, you're not necessarily going to be a priority. And even if you are, you're still not the big band. So they can easily get coverage for the big band, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they can work with you. So, okay. So like, let's say, let's bring it along to something else. So like you don't want to go to a band that's a lot bigger than you for advice necessarily, but I think you should in certain circumstances, but it's always a judgment call.
I think they can be very valuable if they've been around for a while. I think the advice can be valuable in the sense of reference checking.
Yeah.
Because chances are they know a lot of the people that you're thinking about working with.
Mm-hmm.
And they can give you some valuable insight on what it's like to work with that person, because chances are they've already worked with somebody who knows that person, or they've worked with that person. So, but again, when it comes to the big bands, you have to take everything that they say with a grain of salt, because their results are going to be easy. Number one,
Easier.
no matter who they're working with.
Yep.
And their results are not going to be your results if
Not
you use the exact same people, because you're not the exact same band.
Yeah. And it's even the same way with a non-big band, but a band that's on further ahead than you are. So like, for example, let's say that you're talking to a band that just signed with a smaller label, for example. They're still going to have a different experience than the band that's just starting out.
Mm-hmm.
And a band that's on a smaller label is going to have a different experience than a band that's on, for example, like Nuclear Blast or Metal Blade or something to that effect. There's all the different perspectives that you have to kind of keep in mind when you're talking to people. And I think the key point when you're talking to someone who has been around for a bit is you should take all their advice, but you should take it with a grain of salt. And like, how does this apply to me type of thing? Because like, for example, if Corey was to apply to, for, I don't know, example, Metal Blade, and she knew someone that was making, let's say, $200,000 at Metal Blade, although I don't know anybody that's making $200,000, but someone, and so then she went into Metal Blade asking for that salary, would be stupid, because she's not that same person. The other same person probably had been around the block for, 10 years or whatever, and done a whole bunch of other things. Okay, so anything else you want to talk about talking to people that have been around for a while before we move on to the next?
The other thing is, like, when you're talking, if you're a band and you're talking to another band, pay attention to the genre.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're a metalcore band and you're going to a black metal band for advice on what to do, it's not going to be relevant.
Yeah.
Because the way to work, different genres and things like that, they're all different.
Yep.
And so just pay attention to not only like who you're talking to, but what they do. Because if it's wildly different from what you're doing, their results will never, ever be comparable to your results. You could even do better than them if you're in a more popular genre, again, like metalcore versus black metal. You could kick their butt on PR and stuff if it's a more mainstream, widespread genre.
Yeah, things that work in one genre are not necessarily going to work in the other. And but sometimes they do. So you do want to pay attention to that. So also, I think as well, if you're going to talk to someone that's a little bit more successful than you about different things, is you should talk to multiple people as well, if you can. Because again, like you said, the experiences are going to be different. It's the same thing that happens like with bands when they're signing with a label. Like sometimes you'll find like they'll talk to other bands and some of them will have had a great experience. And then others will be like, that was fucking awful. It was the worst thing that ever happened to me. You know what I mean? So if you kind of talk to like a few different people about their experiences, you're going to get a better idea than just talking to one person. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And then the other thing to look at when you're talking to, if you're a band seeking advice from other bands, is what were those bands' expectations?
Yeah.
And how were they measuring their success? Because I've seen it where, a campaign from one perspective, they were wowed, they were amazed, this is so great. And that exact same campaign with the exact same results, oh God, this is garbage because I didn't get XYZ.
Yeah.
So really understanding what they were hoping to accomplish
Yep.
versus what they actually did accomplish are two different things.
This
So
is
look at their results, see if you can get their results yourself and make your own judgments on whether or not it was good,
yep.
because they may have been completely unrealistic, which happens more often than not.
That's a very good point. I know I personally had the experience last November, I think, where it was, where someone was shit talking my PR, but they were also shit talking two other PRs that they worked with. All of them had gotten the major placements. All of them had gotten quite a few placements for the band, including myself, but they just weren't satisfied because they felt like they should be on the cover of magazines, even though they were only on album number 2, self-release. The expectations were just way out there, but they were shit talking all of us.
And on the flip side, look at what they accomplished. If they're saying they did absolutely amazing and they're super wowed with
Yes.
this person, but say their Spotify numbers have actually fallen, which I've seen. I've seen with at least one band that they were talking up their distributor, saying it was the greatest distributor ever. They've had so much success with them, but their Spotify numbers had actually fallen by 20% over a period of a few months, and to the point where they actually dropped down like below what I would consider an underground band in numbers.
Wow.
But they were talking up this, just so look at the numbers. If you're on Spotify, you can compare how any other band is reporting in your Spotify for artists. So go and look at the numbers and actually see what they accomplished. If they're saying something is amazing and the numbers don't add up, their expectations are still skewed, but in the opposite way.
Yep, I agree 100%. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about are people that don't know what they're doing, offering you free advice that you take as being gospel. Okay, so I had this happen to me, I think it was 3 weeks ago, where I had a random writer message me and tell me that, what was it? I don't know what I'm doing with PR, basically. It was not so many words. I mean, I'm kind of paraphrasing. It wasn't like super nasty or anything like that. But they were kind of like inferring that what I was doing was incorrect. This was from someone that had never reviewed any of my promos. They never write or anything like that. And they just tried to basically tell me that I didn't know what I was doing on a campaign. And this campaign was kicking major butt. But this person tried to offer me advice on the right way to do it. I think one of the things they said is, you shouldn't resend the promo to people who haven't opened. And I was like, go fuck yourself, basically, in a nice way. And, so if I would have taken that person's advice when I have a winning campaign, that would just be stupid. So where am I going with this? Well, my throat is going. So where am I going with this? So if you have someone that's trying to tell you what to do, or kind of being critical of you, but they don't have any results themselves, and what you're doing is working, it doesn't make any sense to follow it. You want to elaborate on that for a second, Corey, while I clear my throat?
This also goes back to bands asking other bands for advice. If you're getting advice from a band that has like 4 followers, it's probably not the best advice. I would basically look for bands, if you're wanting to get advice from other bands, that are just above where you are, rather than miles above where you are or below where you are. Somebody who
are doing something.
Yeah, or who are doing something. And then also, again, it just goes back to, if somebody says somebody is doing a shitty job for you, but you're happy with it and you can see the results and they're tangible, you can quantify what is being done. You don't necessarily need to listen to that person. If they're like, oh, that PR didn't get you Loudwire, so they're just absolute shit, but you have 250 other placements, that's a thing to consider, because that one placement at Loudwire is not going to outweigh the 250 others.
Not at all. And it's the same thing with almost anything. Like, if, for example, if I was to tell Corey how to do something with marketing, she might listen to what I'm saying, but she's not necessarily going to take it at the same time, right? You would run it through your own filter and not go, oh, well, Curtis is saying that I'm doing this wrong, so I'm going to change it.
Exactly. I would run it through my own. I mean, I'm always open to input and trying
Yeah,
new things. And that's where testing comes in,
exactly.
especially with marketing. You should
Yep.
be testing everything to see what works and what doesn't work.
Hmm.
Because just running one thing doesn't do you any favors because there could be a better way to do it. There could be something that your audience identifies with more. So that comes down to testing and
Yep.
how things perform. So
And
if you were giving me a suggestion on, hey, maybe we should try this, and it was something I had already done and it didn't work, I would
exactly.
probably be like, I already did that and it didn't work.
Yep.
Or I would test it against what I'm already doing and see if it would work.
Exactly. And this you led exactly into what I was trying to get to, is that you have to test all the advice that you're given
Mhm.
all the time from anybody. So, okay, so what would be, in your opinion, indicators that the advice you're receiving from this person is correct?
The biggest one is it's realistic.
Okay.
Is it's a grounded piece of advice. They're not sitting there and telling a band on their debut single, you're going to get Loudwire if you go through this person. That's not realistic. That's not grounded. But
No.
if they're saying, you know what, you can probably get some placements, get a little bit of traction, something that you can build on as you go, then that sounds like good advice.
Yeah.
That sounds like something that's so just really judge the real. If somebody is promising the moon, it's flat out bullshit.
Most of the
If
time.
anybody's guaranteeing you anything, it is bullshit because nobody can guarantee anything in this industry. If they're saying, you know what, if you go through this distributor, you're going to get on all of the biggest playlists guaranteed.
Mhm.
It's bullshit. If they say, if you go through this distributor and we'll do our best to get you on all these playlists, we pitch these guys. At the end of the day, it's up to them to take it, but we'll try for you.
Yep.
That's more realistic. So
Yep.
really look how things are worded. Anything that's given to you in absolutes, either this will absolutely fail if you go with this person, or this will absolutely succeed if you go with this person. It's all bullshit.
Yep.
So much like the Jedi do not deal in absolutes.
I
There's
was
my
gonna
Star Wars reference for the day.
I,
But
I I was gonna say, yeah,
you don't get it at all. Whoosh.
I
But it's
get it.
okay. Um, but if somebody's saying, you know what, this person works really hard, they're respectful, they'll do their best for you, they don't slack on their campaigns, that kind of advice where it's more focused on the work ethic of who you're working with rather than guaranteeing results is probably a lot more legit.
And even then, it's not always the case. I want to point out, it's not always the case.
No, nothing is that. You always say that. Nothing is ever always the case.
Nothing. Well,
But
because think about it.
people who have a pattern of behavior, like you, for example, let's take you, for
Yeah.
example, and
Okay.
somebody said, you know what, Curtis is really hardworking. He will blast your name out there as many times as necessary. He's going to bust his ass for you. 99% of the time, that advice is going to be correct unless you were hit by a car or something.
Usually, but there have been
Yeah.
instances where things I've done have not worked out.
Yeah, but that's not guaranteeing results. I'm
No, I get
saying you still worked your ass off for those people. It just
agree.
didn't work out.
Agree.
See,
Yep.
that's the difference. If they're saying
Yep.
this person will do everything that they can for you, then it's probably more legit than this person, I guarantee you, will get you on all of the big Apple Music playlists or
Yeah.
whatever.
Does Apple Music have a lot of big playlists? I thought they only had like a couple.
I'm just saying, for
Okay.
example, or all the big Spotify playlists. I guarantee you they will get you in all of these places. I guarantee you they will get you in Loudwire. They can't guarantee you that.
Yeah, no. Yeah, again, it all comes down to perspective again. So if you're hearing a lot of good recommendations about a person, take it with a grain of salt, because again, sometimes it might not work out for the same person, but reversely, you might hear shit talking about a person, or someone had a bad experience with a person that was totally the opposite of the norm, because people sometimes have a bad day, sometimes people change. There's all these different factors that can be involved in it as well. Because I have heard, like, with people that I've now worked closely with, before I worked with them, I mean, I had heard horrible things about them, and then they end up taking them on totally fine, right? So that can happen too. Okay, so now back to the advice thing for a second here. So now, if you get advice from someone you trust, and you think it's legit, I don't think you necessarily should always act on it until you've kind of filtered it through a few different things. Like, for example, does this apply to me? Would be the number one thing.
Mhm.
What would you think would be a few of the other types of things other than just does it apply to me, which is an obvious one?
Well, yeah, does it apply to me is going to be the biggest one.
Yep.
Where are they in their career?
100%.
That's going to be another humongous one.
Yep.
What was their budget? That's another one that nobody ever considers, is what was their budget? If their budget was 10 grand for a campaign, they're going to have far better results than your $500 for a campaign budget.
Well, hold up. Define something here, because you and I both know what we're talking about, but I think we might be going over some heads here. So when you're saying budget, you're talking about ads and stuff. So like, let's talk about, for example, your bread and butter, which is YouTube ads.
Mhm.
So, because this is a very good point, because some bands will be like, Joe Blow band got like 100,000 views and we only got 2,000 views. What the fuck? So can you kind of go over this in a little bit of detail, just with the budget, just because this is an important thing, I think, in regards to ads and expectations and advice?
Oh yeah, definitely. So the amount of reach that you get is directly proportional to the amount of money that you spend. The more you spend, the more people you reach.
Yep.
Yes, you can make that more efficient. Like if your cost per view on a YouTube ad, for example, is 5 cents per view, and
Yep.
somebody else can get it down to 2 cents per view, obviously the same budget will perform better on the 2
Yep.
cents per view. But anyway, regardless of that, if somebody releases a single
Yep.
and they put a ton of money into ads around that, they're going to have better results than if you put $1 a day or whatever it is. And
Agreed.
the other thing that they're doing that is proportionate to their budget is the amount of information that they're gathering. The more you spend on an ad, the more information about your audience and how it behaves you
I see.
gather. So
Yep.
down the road, your budget performs better. So these small budget ad campaigns, where again, it's like $1 a day, really don't do anyone any service, because you're not reaching enough people, you're not gathering enough information, you're not going to get the good results. You can get some sort of result, but it's not enough.
Yeah.
So
So
looking at what their budget was, again, and it's not just ads, look at what their budget was. Did they hire a $1 a day PR? We know those exist. Did
he's selling.
they, versus somebody who's like $500 a month?
Yep.
Obviously, somebody who does this as a full-time career, who's making full-time money off of it, is going to get you better results than somebody who just sends a MailChimp blast for $1 a day.
To obliterate your inbox.
Exactly. So you do get what you pay for in this
Yep.
industry.
Yep.
So, and the other thing, what was their budget for their artwork? Did they have something beautiful that they put out that's really eye-catching? What was their budget for their videos? Did they
Totally.
put out something that was really captivating, that really drew people in? What was
Yep.
their budget for their production? Look
Yep.
at the entire campaign, and if they spent like 25 grand on their release, which is a reasonable budget for a major release,
Yep.
then they're going to get results that are going to be vastly different from yours.
Agreed. Also, at the same time, just as an aside, though, when you're looking at budget, just to play devil's advocate again, you want to look at where they spent their money, because I've also heard of people paying like $25,000 for just the producer, or $40,000 just for the producer, and then they spend nothing on anything else, and then it just fucking bombs.
Well, that's asinine entirely, because
Happens all the time. All the
you
fucking
can
time.
create the most beautiful thing, but if nobody knows about it,
Yep.
So that just doesn't make any sense.
So just to clarify on the budget, ask where the budget was spent at the same time, because I have literally seen bands spend like all their money on the producer and then leave nothing for absolutely anything.
Mhm.
That happens too.
And it goes back to like when you're comparing yourself to bands. Let's take the Who, for example. There's one that
HU.
just
The
HU,
H-
not not the Bono one, but the other
you,
one.
you throw me off every time you say the Who, because
I know, it's very difficult, but they relatively exploded overnight.
Mhm,
And so you could be sitting there going, well, if they could do it, I could do it.
mhm,
That explosive growth was extremely expensive.
mhm.
So comparing yourselves and saying, oh, well, this new band is exploding right now. I'm in a similar genre. Look at the budget.
Yeah,
Because just because you're in the same genre and just because they're exploding and you think you will too because they're getting traction, look at how much money is being spent throwing them in front of people.
and even effort can be another thing that you need to look at as well,
Mhm.
because like a band that, for example, is all over it on social media, and are interacting with their fans all the time are going to have more growth than a band that isn't, and they might not be throwing as much money at them, but at the band rather, but at the same time, they might still be getting growth because of the fact that they're doing a lot of social media.
Yeah,
So
that was the next thing I was going to say is looking at the effort because
yeah,
a band that just kicks back and lets people do their ads and has no social media presence whatsoever really won't even see that much growth. And I've seen it with even big bands where they're just not that active. They're not really
hmm,
engaging with their fans. They may be, older and more established. That they feel like they don't have to, but then they complain that they didn't get enough growth with so and so that they worked with. And it's like
yep,
you have to actually work your
yep,
band as well. It can't be all up to other people
yep.
because your fans don't want to connect with your ad, they want to connect with you.
Sometimes what happens too is sometimes that the band will throw a whole bunch of money at stuff and they'll see like this big growth during the album promo campaign, but then they just drop everything after that, don't do any
Mhm.
promotion or anything like that. They wait like 3 or 4 years between an album release, just do fucking nothing, and then they wonder why they kind of bomb the next time. It's because they didn't do anything in between. So you
Yeah.
have to also
You don't have
that.
to do that much. You don't
Yep,
even have to do that much.
yep,
You can cycle through old like concert shots and
yep,
everything like that. You can
yep,
post memes, you can do Q&As, you can do
yep.
AMAs, you can do all sorts of things to really engage with your fans during the off time when you're not composing a new album.
I agree. Okay, so we should probably wrap up pretty quick. Do you have anything else you want to add to this meaningful conversation, Corey?
Everybody is going to have something to say.
Yep,
Everybody.
yep,
Be very careful who you listen to. And
yep,
if you do trust someone and their advice seems legit, you should probably actually listen to them
yep.
rather than being like, yeah, that sounds good, but I'm going to go do my own thing.
Ooh,
Because, yeah, at the end of the day, there are people that know more than you in this industry. You will not always know the most about your own band, but when it
yep.
comes to the industry, there are people that know more than you. So you should probably listen to them.
I agree. Now let's just take this up because we didn't actually go over that, like about the people that you trust type thing. So okay, so can you kind of go into that just a teeny bit more, and then I want to give my opinion.
Well, so I've worked with a lot of people that they will ask my advice on something. I'll
Yep,
tell them what to do, and they'll just completely ignore it
yep,
and then wonder why, like, why aren't we famous yet? Or
yep,
something along those lines.
yep,
And well, did you do what I said? Well, that just seems like eh. And here's the thing. If I give you advice and you try it and it doesn't work, that's extremely valuable
yep,
because now you know what your audience doesn't identify with and you can go find something else to try. At
yep,
least try things. I
yep,
mean, we talked about that a little earlier. Go
yep,
test things, see if
yep,
it'll work rather than just automatically assuming, that just sounds like BS or I don't feel like doing that.
yep,
Just try it.
yep,
And the worst thing that'll happen really isn't that bad. Like if say for example you're uncomfortable doing Q&As and I tell you it's a great way to engage with your fans, go do a live Q&A and you do one and it bombs and you're awkward and it's like whatever. You know what you can do? You can delete that video.
you
You
can.
don't have to leave it up. You
Nope.
can just go try it.
Yep,
And it could go great, it could go horrible.
yep,
Here's another one where I've had people really uncomfortable doing video interviews because of their accent or whatever. They were really uncomfortable doing video interviews. Just go try it. You know what'll happen if it's bad? They won't publish it. That's
Yep.
it. Like,
Yep.
nothing horrible comes from just trying something. At least just try it. And if
Yep.
it doesn't work, it doesn't work. That's fine. It's not the end of the world.
So, but okay, so like this is a common thing that happens to me. Someone will pay me to do PR, or they'll pay me to do something. They'll ask me a question about something. I'll tell them the right way to do something. Then they'll decide to do a completely opposite thing, and then they'll get mad at me and they'll be like, dude, we paid you money and it didn't work. And I'll be like, but I told you to do something completely different. So, okay, I think the main thing is like, if you're paying someone, like that's a key point. Like if you're paying someone for advice or they're paying you to do something, you should, or you're paying them to do something, you should always listen to what they say and take it into account before deciding it's the wrong thing, especially if they've been doing it for a while. If you're paying someone and you don't trust them, I think that's stupid. You shouldn't be paying that person.
Exactly.
So you kind of got to like, so if you realize after a bit you are paying someone for advice and it ends up being that it's stupid advice, just stop paying them. It's as simple as that. A good example of this is like, I don't want to give that example. I'll just say, so if Corey ever gives me advice on something, I always take it as the very first thing, like especially if it's something to do with, like, she'll give me advice on things like press releases, for example, or pitches. I always take it because she writes. She's always in the thick of things. And if I ever tried something and it didn't work, I would just come back to her and I'd just be like, didn't really work that well. We both probably talk it over and probably go back to the way we were doing things or do something else. That's just the only way that you got to do things is like try it, test it. If it doesn't work, don't do it. Worst thing that's going to happen is maybe you look like an idiot for a minute, but you can almost delete almost anything that happened or fix it. Any final words, Corey?
Nope, I am good on my end.
Ooh, well, party on, Corey.
Party on, Curtis.